recipes at home. Absolutely. Well, I'd like to welcome you all to, I don't know, this must be, how many years have we been doing this, Hannah? 7? 7 years, something like that? 12th annual. Oh my gosh. Well, last year I wasn't here, but Martine Lucier was here in my place. And Martine here is our culinary programs manager at Living Light. Well, let me first say, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Cherie Soria, and I'm the founder and director of Living Light Culinary Arts Institute. We have we have 4 eco-friendly businesses on the Mendocino coast in the city of Fort Bragg. Beautiful little city of Fort Bragg. We're right on the coast. In fact, you can see the ocean from the top floor of our building. We have a raw vegan culinary school. We really started the raw vegan culinary movement in the world, which is now a revolution, we're happy to say. And we have trained more chefs and more recipe book authors of the raw cuisine, and then anyone. And of course the chefs who are out there starting restaurants and working in other raw restaurants also. So we're very happy to be here with you all, celebrating the San Francisco World Vegetarian Day. Actually, it's a worldwide vegetarian day, but we are here in San Francisco, and one of our absolute favorite venues to perform in and to share with you this exciting cuisine. Even though I've been teaching raw vegan culinary arts for almost 20 years now, I'm excited every single day to get up and teach people, even if it's just teaching them how to make almond milk, because I know that that can totally transform the way they look at food and help them to realize that this is something that they can do, that they can add more fresh, raw, organic fruits and vegetables to their diets and feel better. We're not dogmatic about raw food. We don't say you should be 100% raw or you're eating poison. That's kind of ridiculous in my opinion. I do think that everybody can benefit by adding more raw fruits and vegetables to their diet. And our role at Living Light Culinary Institute is to make it taste great. If it doesn't taste great, who's going to eat it? I don't care if you're dying. You're not going to change your diet if it doesn't taste good. And you know, people do it every day. They die rather than change their diet. And so our goal is to make it taste as good or better than cooked. We want people to reach for it, not because they have to, but because they want to. We want them to look forward to their next raw vegan meal. And so that's what we're all about. And we've been doing it for a long time, and we have a beautiful culinary school. And it isn't just for chefs. It is for individuals like most of you who want to be able to make some great tasting raw fruit and vegetable dishes for yourself and your family, and to knock the socks out of your friends, Because really, when you serve this food to your friends, they say, wow, if I could eat like that all the time, I would definitely do it. So today we're going to prove that to you by sharing some wonderful recipes, but not just recipes, we're going to share technique. Because recipes, great, you know, you can get a recipe book, and if you're good at following recipes, you could probably make it on your own. But the really key thing here is to show you how to make up your own recipes, or how to combine recipes together to make something wonderful. Or how, if you make something and it doesn't come out quite right, how you can fix it. Or how, when you want to follow a recipe and you open up your refrigerator and you're missing an ingredient, what can you add to substitute? So all of those things are important. And when we're creating raw living foods particularly, we don't create it, our creator created it, but we're going to make it taste better and feel better in the mouth and look beautiful, stunning, in fact, is really important. So what we go for is flavor. It's got to have flavor. Texture, you know, you've got to have contrasting flavors and contrasting textures, not just the same texture. In a recipe or even in an entire meal, everything, we have to have contrast. I mean, we love creamy and crunchy, don't we? I mean, those are great contrasts. We love sweet and sour. Those are contrasts. Male and female. I mean, we love contrast. That's what we're all about, is contrast. And we also like contrast in color and in appearance. We wouldn't want everything on our plate to be round or square or mashed or chunky. we want it to look like it has contrast. It has to look appealing. So the three things that we go for are flavor, texture, and appearance. We do that every time we're creating a new recipe, and every time we're creating a menu, and every time we reach for something, what can we reach for that's contrasting? So you want to think about that to keep things exciting. You know, you have to have contrast. Well, today I'm going to share with you a few different things, that they all are very different in flavor and in contrast. And the first thing I'm going to show you how to do is to make wonderful cheese out of almonds. And you can make cheese from a lot of different kinds of nuts and seeds. I've even made cheese from beans. You can do it from legumes, although, you know, you've got to be kind of hardcore for that one, because it still tastes a little beany. This is my husband, Dan Latterman, by the way, husband and partner. And he's the one that's going to make absolutely sure that you can see everything we do today. At our school, of course, we have what's going on here. And right away, you know, as soon as I approach him, there's something on there. So sorry. All right. So at our school, can you hear me? I'll just keep talking. At our school in Fort Bragg, which is a beautiful school, I must say. Thank you, Madeline. And we have a full audio video set up with a big screen, and you can see everything that we're doing all the time. It just makes it it's hard when you bring equipment from home and you have a few minutes to put it all together. Okay, so you just unhook yours. Okay, that's all. All right, so we have a bad mic. All right. We wouldn't be able to do a demo in this room if we didn't come with all comparative technology. Thank goodness for technology. How's that? Yay! All right. I know you want to hear everything we've got going on today. So I just want to talk for a minute about cheese, because this is not pate. This is actually cultured cheese. The difference is I'm not using any kind of milk, you know, that belongs to another species. And I know many of you can relate to that, because the majority of you here are vegan. And we are a 100% raw, vegan, and organic in our school. So about 20 years ago, I came up with the idea of making actual cheese from nuts and seeds. And I have made cheese from every kind of nut and seed imaginable. I'm still discovering in my travels new nuts and seeds that I can make cheese from. And it's really exciting because every one tastes a little bit different. And some of them are more practical than others, naturally. And I'm going to show you a very practical one today. I'm going to be showing you how to make cheese from almonds. Now, of course, you could make it from macadamia nuts, more expensive. Or sunflower seeds, a lot less expensive but not nearly so tasty and not very pretty to look at. But almonds make a beautiful white cheese very similar to ricotta. You say ricotta or ricotta? Who's Italian?
Ricotta.
Ricotta, okay. So I said it pretty close. So it is kind of a soft, delicate, crumbly cheese. Now, if I were to make this same cheese using cashews, it would taste very much like Philadelphia cream cheese. Ooh. If I were to use pine nuts, I could actually dehydrate it and make something very much like Parmesan. Yeah. So different kinds of nuts and seeds lend their own flavor, and yet at the same time, when you ferment them, the flavor becomes very diffused because it takes on kind of a sour, cheesy quality. And so you wouldn't know when you tasted this cheese, which you will, that's made from almonds, because it won't have an almond flavor. If you tasted the cashew cheese, it wouldn't taste like cashews because it's fermented and that diffuses the flavor. So even though each one has its own flavor and texture, it doesn't necessarily taste like what you made it from, and that's really exciting. When I discovered that I could make cheeses from nuts and seeds, then a whole world of culinary art appeared before my eyes. I had been a vegetarian chef for almost 20 years before that. I'm 64, by the way. Yay! I can tell you that the older I get, the bigger the payoff. You know, the older I get, the more grateful I am that I started eating a vegetarian diet in my 20s, and that I started eating a live food diet about almost 20 years ago. But it's never too late. It's never too late to reverse aging, is it? No. And I've have so many people who come to our school that have showed me pictures of themselves from just a few years before when they were eating a standard American diet, which we call SAD, S-A-D, standard American diet, and it is a sad situation. And it isn't just American, by the way. I just came back from Bali. And the diet, because I was teaching there, I mean, Asia is so open to raw foods right now, and they're just in love with it. And so they invited me to Bali. I haven't even been home yet, just came back from Bali. But the difference in the quality of health that people are experiencing on small islands of Bali is just, it's astonishing and so sad, because in only 2 generations people have gone to living over 100 years to being old at 60. Because they used to, as they told me, eat pork only on occasion, like during ceremony, and now they eat it all the time. And you can just imagine what that's doing to them. So anyway, that's another story. Let's go back to cheese. So when I discovered that I could make cheese, then I could make cheesecake and lasagna. You know, I mean, a whole world of culinary arts appeared. So I am very excited because this is better than any vegan cheese. Normal cooked vegan cheese that's kind of like rubbery, and you know how it is. I was a cheeseaholic as a vegetarian, and it was really hard for me to give up cheese. That was the last thing that kept me from becoming vegan. Me too. Was cheese. I mean, how many of you are there? You know what I'm talking about. This cheese is so much better. And in fact, I think you're going to like it much better than dairy cheese. So let's get started and stop talking. So in order to make this cheese, almond cheese, the one thing that we have to do to make the cheese white and fluffy is to take off the skins. Now, if I were using macadamia nuts or pine nuts or any of the other nuts that don't have a brown skin, I wouldn't have to worry about that. But it's not that hard. What I have to do is I have to start with boiling water. Now, don't be afraid and think, oh, I'm going to cook the almonds. I'm not. The almonds only have to be quickly drenched in boiling water and just left for just minutes. And then what happens is the skin starts to separate from the almond, and then the skin just pops right off. Now, this is the only stove I own. Actually, that's not true. I have a stove in my home that's never been turned on. It was there when I bought the house 15 years ago. And it's covered. I had a cover made for it, so it's all filled with, you know, bowls of fruits and vegetables, which is what, you know, and inside has, you know, some things that I've stored that I don't use very often. So this is what I use. It's a little hot pot, and I use it for making tea or, you know, anything that I happen to want that's hot. And now I'm putting some almonds in it. I'm going to unplug it. And usually I'll let it sit for just a minute, you know, so it's not actually rolling, which it's not now. And then I'm going to plunge the almonds in it. Now, how do I know I'm not cooking the almonds? Well, when I soak the almonds, after I pop the skins off, if I soak them for about 12 hours, they start to sprout. So that tells me they're still viable. They can still sprout, they're still living. And so this would just have to sit for just a couple of minutes, and then the skins will just pop right off. And then I plunge them into cold water, and then they look like this. I let them sit in cold water, allowing them to create life. In other words, they germinate sitting in that water. They don't need to be refrigerated while they're sprouting, but once they're sprouted, then I will put them in the refrigerator if I'm not going to use them immediately, so that they can stay alive. If I don't keep them in the refrigerator, they'll sour, because now they're a living food. I can't just store them in a pantry like I would if they were dry. Okay, I'm going to set this aside, Martine, and I don't think we need to show them how they pop off, but you just press your thumb and your forefinger together and it just pops right off. Okay, so now, and by the way, look at this cool little thing here. That's really cool. It just fits right inside. They're pre-made. I didn't have to cut that. I could also use screen that you buy at the hardware store. It's really inexpensive and it just cuts. It's is it fiberglass, plastic, or whatever? And then you just put the ring over the top of it. All right, now you're going to blend this with water, and I'm using my Vitamix blender, which is the blender of choice for most raw fooders. And this is kind of this is the smaller size. You could certainly use the larger one. Here's the larger one here. It comes with this size, but we have these at all of our student stations. We find that most of the time, the smaller one is all we need. If we're making our green smoothie in the morning, though, we definitely want the large size because we want a good size green smoothie. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add water, just enough water to come to the top, and that's not quite enough actually. Just come to the top. And there's a measured amount in your recipe packet there. You can see how much. It's going to depend. You'll find that you just want to have enough so that they're barely floating on top. Now, if you want your cheese to be a little bit chunky, you don't have to blend it all the way. And a regular blender will blend it a little bit chunky. In fact, if you're using a regular blender, you'll have to do this in batches. A high-performance blender will blend it, a full batch like you have in your recipe book. Is this a full batch or a double batch? This is 2 cups, so I don't know what your recipe calls for, but this is 2 cups. 2 cups unsoaked. Once it's soaked, it expands. Okay, so the Vitamix blender is great because it's going to blend it all at one time. And I'm going to start it on low, and then I'm going to turn up the volume, so to speak, the amps. I'm going to rev it up to 10, and then I'm going to turn it up to hyperdrive. And so you'll hear the difference. Starting it on low, turning it up slowly, and then all the way. Let's get it going. You'll never go back. It's kind of like sex. Once you have the real thing, you can't settle for less. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, you like that? You know what I'm talking about, don't you? Okay, so now I'm going to use a mold. I forgot one step. Isn't she great? What's going to make this cheese is a starter. Otherwise, it's just a pate. Okay, so now I'm going to add a starter, and this is probiotics. It's just like if you were going to make yogurt, any kind of yogurt, you have to have a starter. So that's what this is, and I can make yogurt this same way. And by the way, I can do this with coconut also, young coconut. So if you didn't want to use, if you had an allergy to nuts or seeds, you could use coconut. That would be young Thai coconut or, from any country that has young coconut. So, but what you have to add is probiotic. Now this is the favorite brand that I have that we use at the school. It's Ejuva Molflora. But you can use any brand of probiotics. You just need to make sure that it's live and active. So I'm going to add that now. And I could have added it at the beginning, but I didn't. I forgot. I was just too busy entertaining. Okay, what I want is a spatula. I'm just going to give it a little, make sure it gets going, because it's quite thick now. If I had added it in the beginning, it would have blended it well. Okay, so that's a nice thick mixture, as you can see. You could add more water to it, but if you do, what will happen is it will take a little bit longer to get thick as it sits, and I'll show you what I mean in just a moment. Okay, what I was looking for was a vortex, because it's got to be mixing all the way. So a vortex is like a tornado. The middle part is getting sucked down and the rest of it's coming up, and then it comes down and up again. So that's what I'm looking for. Now I have a nice smooth mixture, if you can see that. And I'm going to put it in a mold. Now this can be any kind of colander or mold. I use these little berry baskets. They come free when you buy berries. And I like to place them one inside of the other, about 4 deep or so, because that creates a little dead space at the bottom where it's not sitting directly on the bottom of the plate. And water can escape. This is called whey, just like if you're making cheese. A liquid drains out, and we want to capture it. We can use it in a ranch dressing or anything that's kind of a little sour. No need to take it away. Our dogs love it. It's really good for them. You can put it in any kind of a drink or salad dressing. And I'm going to line this with plain cheesecloth, just plain cheesecloth, and that will keep it from going through those holes. So here I have my mixture, my batter, cheese batter. It's not cheese yet. Right now it's just a batter that has been infused with this lovely probiotics. And probiotics are so good for you. One of the things that is important about the whole cheese-making process is not just that it's wonderful from a culinary point of view, although of course it is, as I said, with cheesecake. But also because it makes nuts easier to digest. Because the probiotics, they're eating, they're hungry, and they break down the proteins into basic amino acids, so your body doesn't have to do that so much. So it makes it a lot easier to digest, and it also gives you friendly flora that fights off unfriendly flora in your intestinal tract. And if you want to stay young, like me, you need to make sure that you have the right balance of flora in your intestinal tract. You have to take good care of your digestion, because that's really where the health of your internal body is going to start, is in your digestion. So what I'm doing now is I'm putting the cheesecloth over the top. I'm folding it in, folding it over. And then I'm going to let it sit for about 2 hours or so, just on the shelf in a quiet place, not too hot. And then after about 2 hours, I'm going to put a weight on top of it. And I just use a jar, usually of water. It could have grains or anything in it. Of course, it should be hygienic, completely hygienic, always. And I'm going to set that on top. What will have happened by that time is the whey, or liquid, will have started to drain out, and I will pour it into a container that I can keep for another use. And I'll continue, once it has the weight on it, to allow it to sit on the shelf for anywhere from 8 to 12 hours, depending on how tart or strongly flavored I want my cheese to be. And then it looks like this. And look at how much it's drained out, because a lot of that was water, remember? And it was very heavy because of the water. Once the water drained out, then I have a very firm cheese. And here's what it looks like. I'm going to remove the cheesecloth. Are you you ready for the unveiling? Here we go. That is a ooh-ah moment. Yes, I love this cheese. It's so, look at this. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flavor it. I'm going to put some flavorings in it. And then I'm going to show you one of the many crowd-pleasing recipes that you can use this cheese for. So I'm going to add a few ingredients that I really love in my cheese. One of my favorite ingredients to use is in cheeses and dressings and soups is light miso. Now don't worry if you are grain or soy intolerant because this is chickpea miso. But it's very good. It's made by Miso Master. Miso Master is a company that we've done, we use a lot different kinds of misos that they make, and we really love their misos. So it's a paste. You buy miso in the refrigerated section, and if your store doesn't have Miso Master, then ask for it. Always ask for what you want. My mom and dad told me that when I was really young. If you don't ask for what you want, you may never get it. So I've been doing that all my life, and it works. Okay, so that's Miso Master light miso. And here's just a pinch of nutmeg. I really like nutmeg in cheese. It just adds, I don't know, it makes it taste more cheesy to me. And here's the real secret ingredient, and that is vegetarian support formula nutritional yeast made by Red Star. And Red Star is what I'm looking for. Red Star makes a wonderful vegetarian support formula. Not all of their nutritional yeast is vegetarian support formula, but what that means is B12. So if you have a little bit of that on your salad, in your salad dressings, in your cheeses, in your pates, then you're going to get your B12 without having to pop a pill. Now this is just a pinch of salt. I don't use a lot of salt, but a little pinch of it will help to accentuate the flavor and give it more. Cheeses are very high in salt, so if you need more salt and you're using more salt, of course you can add more. That's a personal choice. But I'm going to be layering this with pesto. Yeah, and pesto is very flavorful on its own, and it will have some salt as well. So, and I'll be putting it on a wonderful cracker, raw of course, so that won't, this just won't need a whole lot of salt because it has a lot of other flavors to support it. Okay, so that's all I'm doing with this cheese, and it's great just the way it is, so it doesn't really need very much. So now I'm going to make pesto, and thanks to Martine here, the Magic Culinary Programs Manager from Living Life, we're all ready to make our pesto. And there's not a whole lot of work to do with this. Do I have a microplaner? Okay. So what I'm going to do is start putting together my ingredients for my pesto. Now you can make pesto using a lot of different herbs. I really love basil in pesto. It's kind of traditional. But you could also use cilantro, you could use parsley, you could use any kind of green, you could use kale. But if you're going to use kale, you're going to have to add some more flavorings to really make it a pesto because it's not a lot of flavor on its own. I'm also going to put some pine nuts in here. Pine nuts are kind of expensive. If you need to use walnuts or something else in its place, you certainly could. And then I'm going to blend it a little bit, start the processing of it just to start to break things down a little bit, okay, before I add my other ingredients. Okay, so just to break it down, I don't want it to be too broken down. And here's a trick that's really important. Whenever you're using herbs in anything, and in sauces particularly, make sure that the herbs are dry. So spin dry them, then towel blot them, no water, because otherwise it will turn black faster. You know how it oxidizes and turns dark, and you don't want that. All right, now I'm going to use some garlic. I hope everybody here likes garlic. I mean, what's pesto without garlic? Right. Well, of course, if you don't like garlic, I would make it for you special without garlic, but not today. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken that garlic and I've just smashed it against the board here because we came from Fort Bragg and there were a few things that didn't make it on the boat. So, actually I would normally use a garlic crusher or a microplaner. And I'm just going to mince this a little bit and it'll be fine. Speaking of on the boat, when we were in Bali, we took a beautiful boat trip to an island where there were no tourists. It's really not on the tourist track at all. And their main export is Irish moss. So for those of you who know what Irish moss is, you can imagine that I was in heaven because I love going to the source of where things are. We use Irish moss in some of our amazing desserts at Living Light. And so it was really fun to be able to get down and clean the Irish moss with the women there and the Balinese women. It was really fun. So now I'm adding some oils here. Not a lot of oil, but enough to hold it all together and to coat the herbs so that, again, they don't oxidize as quickly. The oils add stability to it. I'm using two different kinds of oils simply because I like to, if I'm going to use some oil, I like a little bit of it to be flax oil so that people are getting their omega-3 fatty acids. And omega-3 fatty acids are from fats, and of course you can get them from plant sources like flax. This is a flax oil, or chia, which is my personal favorite. I love especially mila, which is a form of chia. And walnuts, which you could be adding in here, have a certain amount of omega-3 fatty acids as well. In fact, a nice balance of omega-3s and omega-6s. The problem is we get so many 6s that we need extra 3s to make up for it. And so flax and chia are a great source. Okay, so I've added some salt, some garlic, and my two oils. And now I'm going to continue processing. Did I miss anything else, Martine? Okay. I'm going to continue processing now, but just briefly. Now, part of the trick here is not to grind it up too much, because what will happen then is I'll release a lot of water. And I don't want the juices from the basil to be too released. The more I work it, the more liquid it will become, the more it will seep out. And I don't want that. In culinary terms, that's called weeping. Really not a nice term, but it's kind of weeping. That's it. So this is nice. It's chunky. I can see all of the different pieces, which is what I want. And I'm going to just clean off the blade here. And I'm not even going to worry about this. I'm going to use this again in just a few minutes. All right, this looks beautiful. I don't know if you can see it. It's a dry pesto, not really greasy. That's important. And for this particular tort, it's going to be a tort that I'm going to make, I don't want grease to be flowing down the sides. I want it to be really clean. And it's rich enough with the almonds. It doesn't need a lot of oil. So we're skipping that. Okay, so now I'm using a mold here. And you could use any kind of mold. You know, when I first designed this, in fact, the first time I saw a tort similar to this was on the cover of Sunset magazine. It must have been in the early 80s. I was teaching vegetarian culinary arts at the time, and it was made from cream cheese layered with pesto. Now, some of you may have seen that if you're as old as I am. And so I made it using tofu, because I was teaching my students how to make tofu. In those days, you couldn't buy tofu. And so I was making a tofu cheese, and I was layering it with tofu. And then, when I discovered that I could make nuts and cheeses out of nuts and seeds, I translated it again. So this is an old standard, and I've been making it for years, and people love it. Once again, I'm going to cover it with cheesecloth. Started to say, in those days, I was using a clean, of course, is the key word, new, maybe, would also help, flower pot. And it worked great. And it had a nice kind of cone shape to it when I turned it over. Today I'm using glass so that you can see the layers. I'm going to use 3 layers of cheese, so I'm just going to kind of separate this into thirds. Just, like this and then kind of think, okay, that's about a third, and that's about a third. And then I'm going to take the biggest third for the bottom layer, or for the top. I'd save the biggest third for the top layer because it's the widest, and use the smallest third for the bottom layer because it's the most narrow. I've done this before. And then I'm going to just press it in. I would really like a spoon for this. We have a spoon? No. Okay. Then the small spatula that you just took away. It's in there. I see it. Yeah, that'll be fine. Thank you. So I'm just going to press that in. I'm not going to take a lot of time to do this because where am I? I'm actually doing okay. All right. I'm doing fine, actually. I can take a little more time than I thought. All right, so I just press this in. Using a spoon is a little bit easier because I can flatten it out. I think I'll do it with my hand. That's why it's good to have gloves, huh? If my hands aren't too moist, you get them on. Okay. So I can just press this in with my hand. I want it to be nice and firm and nice and clean on the outer edge so you can see my layers. Okay, now I'm going to take a layer of pesto and put that on top. And I'm only having 2 layers of pesto, so I'm just going to divide this in half, approximately, maybe a little less than half for the bottom layer. Press that in. Is your mouth watering?
Yes.
Yeah, mine is too. As many times as I've had this, I still really love it. So good. Now this is, must say, perfectly processed because I don't see grease seeping out. I don't see water seeping out. Nice and clean and easy to work with. Great. Okay. Sure. Okay. And then I don't know if you can see it this way too. See it that way too? Starting to? Okay. All right. So now we'll take the next layer of cheese. And my next layer is my next largest. That right in the middle. Trying not to touch the sides because I want to be able to keep the cheesecloth clean, as clean as possible. Actually, you know, Martine, using the gloves works really well. Whenever I'm making candy or anything sticky, I use gloves because it sticks to your hands so much more readily than it sticks to the gloves. Of course, these are latex-free, powder-free, and all that. I don't use a lot of gloves because one of our commitments is to the environment, and we don't like to waste a lot of them, but sometimes you just have no choice. Instead, we just use really immaculate, hygienic practices. Okay, so now I'm taking my little offset spatula, great little tool to have if you don't have one for your kitchen. Make sure, well, where else would it be besides the kitchen? The kids could find another way to use it, I'm sure. We have besides a culinary school, we do have a store, you know, kind of like your little Williams and Sonoma for raw food chefs. And we have all these kinds of great tools. I love to shop in my store. In fact, everywhere we travel, we look in culinary stores and we find what else is new that we don't have. Okay, so now I'm using the other half of the pesto. So remember, I divided the cheese into thirds, and then I divided the pesto into half, because you start with cheese and you end with cheese, which means the pesto is in between the middle layer of cheese. Got that? Okay, actually I need that back. Okay. So now I'm pressing this in. Again, I want nice clean edges. I want it to be nice and firm. When I was in Bali, I put this on the menu, and but we layered it with tomatoes that were just slightly dehydrated. So they were really intense and not too overly juicy. And oh my gosh, it was a major hit. Yeah, is right. Really good, layered that way. You can use it in so many ways. In fact, you can put, in my book, Raw Food Revolution Diet, you can see on the cover that I stuffed little tomatoes with, you can stuff little sun-dried tomato, or not sun-dried, but cherry tomatoes with the cheese, and then you can have like a pesto sauce over it or something. That's really good, or just a little pesto topping. Okay, and now we have the last layer of cheese. And for those of you who aren't familiar with my books, I've written 3 books, and Raw Food Revolution Diet is the most recent book, and it was written with DeSanto Molina and Brenda Davis, who are dietitians. And the book is really focused on health. In fact, the subtitle is Feast, Lose Weight, Gain Energy, Feel Younger. Who doesn't want that? That's what I thought. We all do. We all want to be able to feast. I mean, feasting, you've got to be able to feast. And you want to, you don't want to feel that you're making sacrifices so that you can be healthy. I don't make any sacrifices in my life. I'm all about, I'm a sentient being. I love flavor, and I love flavor in life. In fact, one of our motto, our main motto at Living Light is making healthy living delicious. And that's not just about food. Healthy living. That's also about attitude, isn't it? There's a lot of things. Food is an important foundation, but there's a lot that goes into a healthy lifestyle. Okay, can you see now what we've got going here? All right. And I'm going to take my cheesecloth, and I'm just going to press it down so that it's nice and firm. Get rid of any little pockets. Okay. And then normally I would let this sit for a little bit so that it can firm up. It's going to be a little soft. I'm hoping that I can do this. I think I'm going to have to take those crackers off of there because I just don't want to ruin anything. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn this over. And another thing that didn't make it on the boat was all the, platings, but I think this will be attractive. So I'm going to place this in the center just like that. And then I'm going to remove the mold. Yay! Yay! All right. And while Martina is putting the crackers around this, don't throw this away. Rinse it out really well in the sink first, and then put it in, ladies, you have your little lingerie bags with the zippers in them. Wash it in that so that it don't get little strings and the rest of it. And don't wash it with your dainties. It should be washed with the kitchen towels and things for food. And then don't put it in the dryer because all the holes will shrink up. So then you just hang it and it will dry nice and pristine, and then you want to fold them up and take care of them. But what do you think about that? Isn't that lovely? Are you ready to try it? Yes. Well, you're going to have to wait a little while. Yeah, because I've got some other great things to make. Don't you want to see them too? Okay, I thought so. All right, so we're going to put that aside. The cheesecloth that cheesecloth is double. When you buy cheesecloth, and I buy cheesecloth that is unbleached, when you buy it, it's triple. Open it up and double it. So it's no longer triple. Then it's wide enough that you can line your colanders with it. If, like us, you sometimes cater large events for hundreds of people, and we do make cheese like this sometimes when we cater events. We'll take the big baking dishes that have the holes in them, and we'll take cheesecloth and we'll just line them like that. And it works great. So you can, any kind of colander. So the next thing that I'm going to make is so simple. You're going to love this. It's a pecan pate. And this is a dish that is wonderful for the holidays. And the holidays are going to be coming up soon enough. So the first thing that we have here, we're using pecans, and that's why I say it's so great for the holidays, because, when you think about the holidays and nuts, pecans come to mind. And of course I could use different flavorings for this if I wanted to. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to put these pecans, which have been, by the way, soaked and dehydrated first. Now you don't have to do that, but what I find is that nuts that have the dark skin are bitter. They have a bitter, the skin is a little bit bitter. If I soak it, what happens is the bitterness is drawn into the water. Now, the bitterness comes from enzyme inhibitors. The enzyme inhibitors there are there because it's kind of nature's defense against insects and also against prematurely sprouting the nut. So if it's just a little damp, they won't sprout. The enzyme inhibitors have to be washed away, so there has to be enough rain to wash away the enzyme inhibitors in order for them to sprout. And that's kind of their survival mechanism, that there's enough water for them to sprout. But there's a bitterness involved. So I like to soak and dehydrate them. Also makes them easier to digest. But you can do it if you don't have a dehydrator. You can do it without soaking. So I'll start with my pecans. And I'm going to begin just pulsing them. And I'm using a food processor for this. I could actually chop it and use a mortar, but it would take a long time. I could make a large amount that way. And this is not a food processor. This is a Cuisinart food processor. But this is not a recipe that you have to have an expensive food processor for. I could use a Hamilton Beach $40 food processor, and it would work just fine for this. I just, have the best of everything. I deserve it. Yeah. So you have a recipe for this. I'm using a little bit of lemon juice. I find that lemon juice helps to transform the flavor of the nuts into something unique. It kind of softens the flavor. Also gives a brightness to foods. This is wheat-free tamari. So those of you who are gluten intolerant or just don't want to eat gluten, you can get an unpasteurized wheat-free tamari. I use Osawa brand. They've had a wheat-free tamari for a long time that's organic and unpasteurized. I'm also using some powdered, what is this? Powdered onion or powdered garlic? Powdered garlic. I'm using powdered garlic instead of raw garlic in this because I want it to be more of a cooked, integrated flavor. I don't want the sharpness, the drama of fresh garlic. So I'm using a powdered garlic. And I do that sometimes with onion as well. I'll use powdered onion for the same reason. And sometimes I'll use both. I'll want a little bit of the sharpness, but I also want more of an integrated onion bottom. You think of foods having highs and lows, kind of like the base note. You're building layers like in a choir. And that's what you're looking for when you're creating, when you're in culinary arts. You're looking for the whole range of flavor, the whole range of the choir. The high notes being like the lemon, for example, and the deeper notes being like the wheat-free tamari, which is very deep, dark, rich. Okay, and now I'm adding some salt. Again, just to my palate, which is not a salty palate, so you could add more if you wanted to. And this is for World Veg Day Pecan Pate. Decoration. Okay, well, there you have a lemon for decoration. And if you wanted, you could add some zest, or perhaps if I didn't have lemon juice that was tart enough, I could add more. So I can thank my team for giving me that. Or making my own lemon juice. Well, we'll see if we need it. Thank you. And this is scallions. And scallions, I love scallions in this dish. You don't have to use scallions, but I really like it. And these are so beautifully minced that I'm going to hold off on putting them in immediately because I want to add them. I want to keep those little finely minced. If they weren't quite this finely minced, I could just add them right now. But we have such a great team of demo prep artists at our school that they did this so beautifully. I don't want to ruin it. Now, this is not going to take long. It's really important that you never walk away from this. I'm going to stand here and watch it. I don't want it to be processed so much that the oils break from it. Pecans are a very oily nut, And if I leave it in for 30 seconds too long, it's going to all just be greasy. So I want it to be spreadable, but still be able to feel some texture in my mouth. So let me see where it's at right now. Okay. Now what happened is it started to go like this together, and that's what I'm looking for. So I can go ahead and I can see that it's still on the crunchy side. It's still a little too crumbly actually. So I can press it together, but it still wants to crumble. And that the texture is really important. I want some texture in it, but I also want it to be a pate, not a crumble. Now, notice how I was kind of rocking my Cuisinart. I wasn't pounding it, right? I have a love affair with this machine. I want to keep it in good shape. So now I'm going to add the scallions. And so the scallions, and maybe a little more scallions than I want. I'm just going to leave some out. They're so finely minced that it might just be, might take over. You know, trust your instincts. This isn't rocket science, so it doesn't have to be, you know, to the minute exact, but trust your instincts when you're preparing food. If it feels like, I want more, I want less, then you should do it.
So where does it get this raw?
So how can you get raw almonds locally? I'm not from San Francisco, so I don't know if you can buy them local. You know? Farmers market. Farmers market. Okay, so you have almond growers at the farmers market. That's good. You know, we buy them directly from a grower on the internet. Okay, so this is what I'm looking for. Now you notice when I press it together there, it stays together, and yet it's not weeping oil. So I can still feel that there's texture there, but that's a beautiful texture, spreadable texture. All right. Now there's a lot of different ways that I can serve this. It's just absolutely beautiful the way it is. You know, Martine, I would love for you to take a little bit of that almond cheese, give me a little slice of it to put right here. And I'm going to show some of my pates on that, as well as other ways. I can put this in a mold. Yeah, you can just cut a piece of that off. I can put this in a mold. I could, like, you know, a little heart-shaped mold or a little star-shaped mold or any kind of mold that I wanted to. Or I could roll it into balls and put it in a little baby romaine leaf. I could put it in a safe bag and make little rosettes out of it. Or I could just place it I could make it into a roll and then slice it and place it on cucumber rounds. So there's a whole lot of ways that I could do. I could put it in a sushi roll. That would be really lovely. And just roll it into a little, like a little sausages and place it on a sushi roll or spread it. So there's a lot of different ways that I can use this, and it's really, really yummy. I think I'll leave this in a little ball for now, and we can put this on my little tasting tray there. Okay, that's very nice. Okay, just make one in the middle there. 3 would be nice in there. You want to do that for me? I'm going to let you take over that. And then I'll show it off when you're done. Okay. I don't know if you can smell this, but I love making food I love to eat. So much fun. Thank you, Martine. I'll let you take that. All right. So we've made so far, for those of you who recently joined us, we've made almond cheese. We've made basil pesto. We put them together in a fabulous almond cheese and pesto tort. And tort means layered, by the way. Any of you are confused between tort and tart? I knew I was for a while, but a tart is something that's in a little crust, and a tort is something that's layered. You could have a tarty tort. No, you couldn't have that. A tart? No, one or the other. Okay, so now I'm going to make a tapenade. And tapenade can be made with a lot of different ingredients. Typically, though, it is made with walnuts, capers, and olives. But it could also be made with sun-dried tomatoes if you didn't want olives, if you wanted to have a lower fat version. These olives were sun-dried, raw sun-dried olives, and they are typically sun-dried olives are salt cured. That's the salt preserves them so that the olives don't spoil. So they're rolled in salt and then they're dehydrated. So when you get them, they're very salty. And what we do is we soak them, and then well, first we rinse them very well, and then we soak them in water with herbs and garlic, and we let them sit for about 24 hours or so, and then we pour off the water, and we refill the water again. So now the water has had a lot of the salt removed. It has removed a lot of the salt from the olives, and now the olives are starting to soak up the herbs and the garlic. And they have just this wonderful flavor after about 3 days. And you only have to really check in on them every day, once a day. In the refrigerator, soaking in the refrigerator is the best place. And then you drain them and toss them in a little bit of olive oil just to re-preserve them. Now these have already been seeded for me or pitted for me. That would be something you have to do yourself. And you can either use a Cherie/olive pitter, which they make, and you can buy inexpensively. Or you can lay them out on a paper towel, put another paper towel on top, press them with the palm of your hand, and that separates the seed or the pit from the flesh. And then all you have to do is open them up and the seed falls away. So it's actually quite simple to do. Now you have the recipe for this in your packet, and called black olive tapenade. So we're going to start by putting the olives and the walnuts. And the walnuts, these walnuts again have been soaked and dehydrated, and I told you earlier that's because they have a brown, bitter skin. But if you wanted to skip that step, you certainly could. So here we have our pitted olives, and I'm going to assume that every single pit is gone. We'll know soon. Don't you just hate when it happens, though, that they aren't. So there they go. And I'm going to start by pre-processing those two. Very much like when I made the pesto and when I made the pecan tapenade or pate. I started with the nuts first, grind them down a little bit, then I add everything else. So we'll start with that. Okay, just to get it broken down, I don't want the walnuts to disappear. I'm not looking for walnut butter and olive butter. So I want a little bit of chunkiness. And so now I'm going to add all my other ingredients. And here we have garlic. Again, we didn't get our garlic pressed. So we're just going to get this started on its own here. Some chopped garlic. And I sure hope there aren't any people here who don't like garlic, because I have garlic in everything today. I'm sorry. I love garlic. Garlic is an antibiotic. And when I travel to tropical countries, which I do quite often, go to especially Costa Rica because we have a home there, we eat a lot of garlic and it keeps the bugs away. And I don't care if it keeps other people away. You know, that's all right with me. Most of the people I'm around like garlic too. How long do I soak and dehydrate nuts? Is that the question? And the answer is, it depends on how hard the nut is. If it's something like walnuts, they don't take more than about 6 hours to soak and become soft. Almonds take a little longer, usually 8 to 12 hours for almonds because they're harder. Sunflower seeds, maybe only 4 hours. Same thing with sesame seeds, very soft and very fine. Then they don't take very long at all. Sesame seeds are very bitter if you don't soak them. That's why tahini is bitter, but if you soak your sesame seeds, it's not. And then how long you dehydrate them also depends on how soft they are. Harder nuts usually take longer to dehydrate than softer nuts do because there's more air there to allow the dehydration process. I usually dehydrate nuts at 105 simply because when all dehydrators spike and ebb. That means that they try to keep a medium temperature of what you've set it for, but it will go a little bit higher at times and then it'll turn off. And then it'll come back on a little bit higher and then it'll turn off, trying to keep this temperature. 118 is the threshold. Where if you have something at over 118 for about 20 minutes, you start to lose enzymatic activity. So I usually say 105 is safe because of the fluctuation. However, if something is very high in water content, say I am warming a lasagna and I'm going to have it in there for 2 hours, and I want it to get warm, I want some of the moisture to dehydrate so it will really look and taste baked, then I'll turn it up to 125, 130 for about the first hour because it has so much moisture that the air temperature and the temperature of the food itself is not the same. In other words, you can touch that lasagna and you'll find that to touch it, it still feels cool. It should be feeling warmer than your body temperature in order to dehydrate. So you have to get the temperature up enough that it's starting to dehydrate, and then you turn it down. One of the things that we teach people at Living Life is how to use the equipment that you use properly. The first day of your training, Fundamentals of Raw Living Foods, is a one-day training. You can just do one day if you want. You learn how to use a Vitamix, a Cuisinart, a dehydrator, all the different kinds of equipment that you use in a raw food kitchen. You learn how to make everything from sprouting, growing wheatgrass, making cheeses, making pates, all the way through making desserts. So it's a real intensive one day. We don't waste a minute of your time. But we don't use a stove. And so we need to be able to change textures in different ways. You don't have to have a dehydrator to make great tasting food. I'm making great tasting food for you today. Where's the dehydrator? Well, we did use one for the nuts. But you don't have to. You don't have to. So here I'm putting in, I've added my garlic, and I'm also adding some herbs. You could add fresh herbs if you want, but these dried herbs travel pretty easily, and they all made it on the boat. And we're also adding some lemon juice. Remember I said that lemon juice can add that little high note, little soprano to the chorus. And I'm adding some olive oil. I'm not going to add as much olive oil to this as the recipe calls for, and you don't have to either. And I'm adding capers, and that I'm going to add all of them because the capers really add a lovely flavor. Who knows what capers are? Yeah, capers are small flower blossoms, and they grow in the Mediterranean region. There are areas where that is their export, just like this island in Bali that I just came back from. Their main export is Irish moss. So the people's lives revolve around these berries that are capers and that are so loved throughout the world. Okay, so now I'm going to process this again, not for very long, just for a brief time. And I want the capers to still be just barely broken up. I've soaked, okay, the question has to do with the olives. How many of you want me to repeat that? Okay, let's do it again. I know I said it quickly. So the olives come very salty and dry. We rinse them really well, and then we put them in they're going to swell up, so give them plenty of room in a jar. Fill them with more water, and of course we're using good water, not your regular tap water, but good filtered water at least. Garlic, which we smash, and fresh herbs, whatever kind you like, rosemary, oregano, whatever you like. And then we let them soak there for about 24 hours, pour the water off, replace the water, leave the herbs and the garlic in there. And then you just do that twice more. So for 3 days, they're soaking in water. And you might not want to soak them that long. Maybe you like yours a little saltier, and you can leave them. Oh, this is what they look like when they've been soaked and before they've been pitted. They're really yummy. I'll save those for my salad. So these have already been soaked in the garlic and herb mixture.
How did you get the olives?
And then, how did I pit the olives? Okay, well, Martine and her team gave me everything I need to show you how to do that. Okay, so here they are. Here we have some olives that have the pit in them. They've already been soaked. And I would be putting a lot of them on a big. I'm using paper towels because they're oily and it would be hard to wash out of my good kitchen linens. So I'm just placing them together on a sheet of paper, and then I'm going to use the palm of my hand to press down on each one of them, just like that. And then once they split, as you can see here, the seeds just pop right out. See me do that again? Okay, see that? Then the seeds just pop right out. Much easier than, trying to cut them with a knife and everything else. Oh, I've got lots of tricks up my sleeve. And I don't keep any of them to myself either. So you come to the school, you'll learn a lot of tricks. Being in the kitchen, fun. Whether you've ever liked to cook or not, you can have fun in the kitchen. Okay, so now we have tapenade. It's beautiful, I can tell. I'm going to show you here what it looks like. Okay, give you that, Martine. And here it's definitely spreadable, and yet I can see all the little bits of walnuts, and the olives are in there, and the capers are, you'll be able to feel the capers in your mouth. That's important. And we can, of course, put that on, we're going to serve this on cucumbers. We're going to serve this on cucumber rounds for you. So we'll get that going. I don't have any here. Well, this is the kind of cucumber that we're using. You could make this in, you can just spread it on. You could put it in a little, do we have one cucumber? Or no? Already made? I know I could do it, but I kind of would rather not. So here we have yet a third little appetizer. By the way, your pecan balls are going to be served on bread that is made in a dehydrator. It's made from onions and sunflower seeds, and it has herbs, and I'm not teaching you how to make that today, but it is something that you would learn how to make when you would come to the school. Okay, so there's a little tray of some of the things that we should to make today. Is this how we're going to be serving it? Okay, so you're going to see when you get your samples that we put the olive tapenade in a pastry bag. This is what that would look like. So that when you put it on a cracker, or in this case a cucumber slice, you can just do this. See how easy that is. So if you're doing 100 of them for a dinner party, it would be really, really easy to just lay them all out and just do this. And that's what our volunteers over here have done for you. Question over here? If you get fresh olives, you don't necessarily have to do what we did. We do this because we want to get all that salt out. And so that's why we soak them. That's wonderful. Okay, so the question has to do with if you want to make the tapenade and you're using a really dried olive, which I love dried olives, those are so good, you would have to soak them. Yeah, to get more moisture into them. How long will the tapenade last? Probably about 5 minutes. But seriously, you can keep it in your refrigerator for a week because it doesn't have anything that's going to degrade easily. So yeah, it would easily last for a week. And your olives, by the way, once you soak them the way I recommended, and then you toss them in olive oil, they'll last in your refrigerator in a glass jar for a month. Not really. because you'll eat them before that. But they could last that long. So I've gone out of town, come back, and they've still been good. So, okay, so now our samples are coming around, and I know I'm going to have a lot of moaning and oohing and awing, but I would really love to hear your questions. Any questions at all? Okay, in the back, say your name.
My name's Anna.
Anna?
I'm wondering if you could repeat the name of the probiotic powder that you
The probiotic powder that I use is Flora. It's made by Ejuva. It's right where? Oh, it looks like this. The company is EJUVA, Ejuva, and this is Flora. MOFLORA. Like more flora, Flora. You can take it as a supplement if you want. In fact, that's what it's intended for. But I've been using this particular probiotic for many years, and I have a lot of faith in the company. I have used other kinds of probiotic formulas, and they usually work pretty well. You just have to use one that you know is live. And once you open a package, you always want to keep it in the refrigerator because it is live and you want to keep it live. But we sell this. If you're interested in seeing the kinds of things that we use in our culinary arts tradition, you can go to our website, rawfoodchef.com, and we have a store there. You can also learn more about our classes because we have ongoing classes. We are a full-time culinary school. You can tell by, well, hopefully you can tell by what we've done here that we are very professional, we're very organized. We have people who come to our school, all ages, from all walks of life, and people who just want to make great tasting foods for themselves and their families, or people who are executive chefs from Paris, and who would be working together because everybody wants to learn how to make this great tasting food. When I work with a professional chef, what I find is that they have certain ways that they're used to doing things. They know that they want to make a glaze, but how do they reduce it to make a glaze if they're not going to be able to cook it? You know, how do they bind a recipe? How do they gel without using animal proteins? You know, so there are a lot of techniques that we use to create wonderful things like tiramisu and pizza and burgers and lasagna and onion rings and things that they just wouldn't know how to do. And so they're just as much a beginner in many ways as those of you who have never been in the kitchen. In fact, sometimes people who consider themselves know-nothing novices are more open to new ideas than people who are kind of set in their ways. And they come up with things that I would never have thought of. It's really exciting, in fact, for us all to grow together. And I'm so fortunate to be in a position where I get to work with people from all over the world. Literally, people from over 50 countries have come to our school. Every single time we have a class, there are people from all over. Everywhere. You name it. Question?
I have a question. What do you do? Do you have a suggestion for people that use the traditional yeast or the miso in general? Not just the soy, but like the pate?
So the question has to do with people who have to stay away from miso in general. Is that because it's fermented?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to stay away from all fermented food, and sometimes when you have yeast overgrowth issues especially, you might have to stay away from fermented foods. And then I would say, skip it.
Okay.
Just leave it out.
What about like if you're just more people listen to like the nutritional yeast itself?
Now, nutritional yeast does not really impact yeast overgrowth. There are other kinds of yeast that do, but that one doesn't. Again, it's a flavoring agent, so you can leave it out. Most flavoring agents you can leave out if it's something like, if you're going to make a walnut tapenade, it's hard to, or say a olive tapenade, it'd be pretty hard to leave out the olives, but you could replace it and make a sun-dried tapenade. So there's always something that you can replace it with, or you can just leave it out. So be creative. Don't think you're stuck with the recipe. One of the things that we teach our students in the first week of training is how to create your own recipes. You don't want to have to be dependent on other people's recipes. What you want to know is what goes into making a good recipe. You have to understand the different flavors that are involved, the different textures. So we teach you about that. We actually have a tasting, like a wine tasting, but much more scientific in a way. We have a tray with 5 different flavors plus fats, and there are 6 different ingredients that fall into each of these 6 categories. You taste them. You taste the opposite, so you start to understand how contrasting flavors come together to make something new. And then you add a 3rd ingredient, and what does that do? So you start to understand the dynamics of flavor and how to create balance. And just like in an orchestra or a choir, yes, you want harmony, but you also want something for drama. So you want one voice to stand out. For example, if I'm making a ginger sauce, I want to taste the ginger. The ginger's the star. But all the other ingredients have to be there to support it, because ginger by itself, that's not what I want. So I want to taste the ginger, but I've got to have all the supporting cast, all the other voices to come together and hold it in front, just in the right balance. So understanding flavors is really important. You can come to Living Life for, as I said, 1 day, and you can learn a tremendous amount. Or you could come for a week and learn an amazing amount. Or longer. How many of you have been for our chef training program? We've got a few people in here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you still haven't had enough of me? You're back for more?
A question.
Okay.
The crackers, do you make those or they?
The crackers, yes, we made the crackers. Do you like the crackers?
No.
Okay. The crackers, those are made from golden. Which ones are they? Are they made from bell peppers, and sesame seeds and flax, and they have just other herbs and spices in them. And they do need a dehydrator to make a cracker. Dehydrators, we use an Excalibur dehydrator. I've been using Excalibur dehydrators for years. It's the only dehydrator that I recommend. And it's less than $200. And you can make such great tasting crackers and crunchy snacks with the dehydrator. It's really well worth the investment. Another question? The recipe for these particular crackers are not in my books. The dark bread, that's a bread, and that is, I don't think that's in my book. It might be, but you like that? And that's made from sunflower seeds and onions. Onions that have been soaked to get out the strong onion taste. Another one of the many tricks that we have up our sleeve. I am selling my book. It's at my booth, and any of you who want to talk to me about classes or anything else, I'll be at my booth, which is against the far wall, kind of not too far from here, actually, and I'll be over there as soon as we're finished. Any other questions?
I knew it was with an S. She said Cherie.
Okay, can I ask everybody to take their voices down a little, because we're not quite finished, and I know there's a lot of really good information that can come out of questions. Can everybody please keep their voices down? Thank you. Okay, I had a question. And the question had to do with, do I always flavor the almond cheese that way? No, sometimes I'll make a sweet almond cheese for a dessert, for example. Or I'm making a Mexican-style almond cheese. Or there's just so many different flavorings. I don't always flavor it this way, but I always flavor it because I'm all about flavor. So I always flavor it. But you don't have to. If you like it more bland, you certainly don't have to. Another question? I have a world of answers to any questions. Yes?
Hi, my name is Steve.
Hi, Steve.
What blender do you use, and how is it different from other blenders?
Okay, what kind of blender do I use, and how is it different from other blenders is the question. I use a Vitamix. I've been using a Vitamix for about 30 years. And I do have other blenders, but it's my favorite blender. We have one at every student station. We have about 6 of them in our main kitchen. And that's the one that I used here to demonstrate. And there are other high-performance blenders, but that's just my favorite. I really love that I have control of it. There are blenders that have presets, so you push whatever button and it goes up and down and does its thing. But I drive a stick shift because I'm a control enthusiast. And a Vitamix allows me to have the control that I want to have. I can turn it up higher, turn it lower, pulse it, do whatever I want. And I like that control. And it performs for me. Remember I talked about sex earlier? No. Blenders? You missed it. It performs for me. Okay, question over here.
Probiotics in the cheese, the bacteria actually grow if you're actually getting more out of the probiotics.
This is a very good comment. Yes, when you add probiotics to the cheese, thyme, T-I-M-E, is the secret ingredient because as you leave it sit at room temperature, it will grow. So the longer you leave it, the more sour it will become. Yes, it does continue to grow. And some people will actually take a little bit of that and use it as their starter for their next batch of cheese. I don't do that, but it is possible that you can. Especially if you're making something like coconut yogurt. It actually works very well to just make it for 2 or 3 times and then it's spent. So, yes, it's very true. Another question or comment?
What is purified water?
Purified. What is purified water? That means that it has been filtered, so it doesn't have any fluoride or chemicals, chlorine or anything like that. So that wraps it up. I'm out of time. Thank you so much for being so attentive. And I'll let you have a photo moment in just a second. I want to thank the wonderful people at San Francisco Vegetarian Society for having me here year after year. Please come next year. It's going to be an extra special event, and we will be catering an evening meal. So I'm already thinking about what I'm going to make for you, and you don't want to miss it. All right, thank you.